I watched Caleb wipe a tear from his cheek at the altar, looking every inch the devoted groom overwhelmed by love. The entire congregation sighed at his sensitivity. They saw a man emotional about our future children. I saw a man performing a play he didn't know had already been canceled. He was thanking God for a miracle, but I had the lab results in my hand that proved he was just a liar. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. It was 104 degrees in Austin, Texas. The kind of heat that doesn't just sit on you, it actively tries to murder your ambition. I should have been at the nail salon getting a French manicure that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. I should have been sipping a mimosa and letting my bridesmaids lie to me about how calm I looked. Instead, I was on my hands and knees in Caleb's home office, inhaling the scent of stale dust and old printer toner, frantically searching for a passport that he swore he had left on the desk. I hated this room. I hated the way he organized his life, which was to say, he didn't. It was a graveyard of good intentions and half-finished projects. Piles of marketing briefs were stacked like Jenga towers waiting to collapse. I moved a stack of invoices and found a dried-out coffee mug that had probably been there since the previous administration. "Caleb!" I shouted toward the closed door, trying to keep the screech out of my voice. "It is not on the desk." No answer. He was downstairs watching preseason football analysis, likely eating the expensive hummus I had bought for my lunch. I wiped sweat from my forehead. My engagement ring caught the light, a princess-cut diamond that I used to think was a symbol of his commitment. But right now, it just felt heavy, like a shackle made of compressed carbon. We were supposed to fly to Greece in 72 hours, Santorini, Mykonos. The honeymoon I had paid for because Caleb was liquidating assets to buy our future dream home. If we missed that flight because he couldn't keep track of a government-issued ID, I was going to scream until the windows shattered. I yanked open the bottom drawer of his filing cabinet. It was jammed shut naturally. I gave it a violent tug, the metal screeching in protest, and it popped open. There was no passport. Of course there wasn't. But there was a manila folder. It was thick, dog-eared, and shoved to the very back, buried under a stack of warranties for electronics he no longer owned. I don't know why I picked it up. Maybe it was the biology teacher in me, the instinct to categorize, to investigate, to understand the taxonomy of a mess. Or maybe it was just divine intervention disguised as snooping. I opened it. The first page was a medical logo I didn't recognize immediately, Austin Fertility Center. My heart did a strange, stuttering double beat. I sat back on my heels, the carpet rough against my knees. Why would he have a file from a fertility center? We hadn't started trying yet. We had talked about it constantly. God, had we talked about it. He wanted 3 kids. He wanted a boy first. He had names picked out, Jackson, Wyatt, Bo. He had painted this mural of our future suburban life with such vivid detail that I could practically smell the grass stains on the imaginary soccer uniforms. I flipped the page. The date on the header was from 12 years ago. Patient name, Caleb James Wade. Date of birth, August 12, 1989. Diagnosis, testicular carcinoma post-chemotherapy analysis. Cancer. He had cancer? He had never told me. Not once. In 2 years of dating, 2 years of sharing secrets and fears and what's your biggest regret conversations over wine, he had never mentioned having cancer. My stomach dropped. I felt a wave of guilt wash over me. Poor Caleb. He must be traumatized. He must be scared to talk about it. Then my eyes drifted down the page to the results summary. Semen analysis, azoospermia. Concentration, 0. Motility, non-applicable. Prognosis, permanent sterility due to cytotoxic treatment. The world stopped. The humming of the air conditioner, the distant sound of the television downstairs, the blood rushing in my ears, it all just ceased. I read it again. Permanent sterility. I read it a third time, dissecting the words like I was grading a particularly disastrous lab report. 0. None. impossible. My brain tried to reject the data. It didn't fit the hypothesis. The hypothesis was that Caleb wanted a big family. The hypothesis was that we were going to start trying immediately after the honeymoon. The hypothesis was that he was excited to be a father. If this document was real, then every conversation we had for the last 2 years was a lie. Every time he touched my stomach and smiled, every time we debated the merits of public versus private school, every time he said, "I can't wait to see you holding our baby," I felt bile rise in my throat. I wasn't sad. I wasn't heartbroken. Not yet. I was disoriented. It was the feeling of walking down a staircase and missing a step, that lurch of gravity betraying you. He knew. He had known since he was 21 years old. I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I didn't scream. I didn't run downstairs and throw the file at him. I did what a scientist does. I collected data. I photographed every single page. The diagnosis, the follow-up appointments confirming the condition hadn't changed, the letter from the specialist advising him on donor options if he ever wanted children, a letter he had clearly received, read, and filed away. I uploaded the photos to a secure cloud folder. Then I created a second folder on a different server and uploaded them again. Redundancy is the key to survival. I put the papers back exactly as I found them. I smoothed the dog-eared corner. I slid the folder under the warranties. I jammed the drawer shut until it stuck. I sat there on the floor for another minute, breathing in the dust. I needed to go downstairs. I needed to look him in the face. I needed to see if I could spot the liar behind the eyes I had spent 2 years adoring. I walked down the stairs. My legs felt like they belonged to someone else, heavy and wooden. From the living room, I heard the roar of a crowd on the TV and the crunch of a tortilla chip. Caleb was sprawled on the sectional, feet up on the coffee table, on the coaster-free part of the table, naturally. He was wearing his Lucky Longhorns t-shirt, the one with the hole in the armpit that he refused to throw away because he was sentimental. He looked up as I entered. He had a smudge of hummus on his chin. "Find it, babe?" he asked, not looking away from the screen for more than a second. "No," I said. My voice sounded thin, tinny. "It wasn't there." "Weird," he said, popping another chip into his mouth. "I could have sworn I left it on the desk. Maybe it's in the kitchen junk drawer. You know how you move my stuff sometimes when you're cleaning." I froze. I move his stuff? I cleaned his house because if I didn't, we would be living in a frat house ecosystem of pizza boxes and gym socks. "I didn't move it, Caleb," I said, leaning against the door frame because I wasn't sure I could stand unsupported. "But I'll check the kitchen." I didn't move. I watched him. He looked so normal, so relaxed. He didn't look like a man carrying a devastating secret. He looked like a man who had successfully scammed a woman into planning a wedding and was now enjoying the halftime show. "Caleb," I said. "Yeah, hun." "I was thinking about the guest room," I lied. The lie tasted metallic on my tongue. "For the nursery. Do you think we should paint it before we start trying, or wait until we know if it's a boy or a girl?" This was the test, the control variable. If he had a conscience, if there was any part of him that felt guilt, he would flinch. He would look away. He would hesitate. Caleb turned to me and smiled. It was that warm, crinkly-eyed smile that had made me say yes on Mount Bonnell. "Babe, you're overthinking it again," he said, his voice dripping with that patronizing sweetness he used whenever I asked about budgets or timelines. "You get so stressed about the details. It's not good for you. We've got plenty of time for all that. Let's just enjoy being newlyweds first, okay? God has a plan for us. You need to learn to just trust the process." Trust the process. He was gaslighting me with theology. He was using my own anxiety against me to shut down a conversation about a biological impossibility. "Right," I said. "God's plan." "Exactly," he said, turning back to the TV. "Don't worry your pretty little head about it. We'll have a whole football team running around here before you know it. Now can you grab me a beer since you're heading to the kitchen? Hydration is key. I stared at the back of his head. I wanted to grab the heavy crystal vase on the console table and introduce it to his skull. A whole football team. He was lying for sport now. It wasn't just a lie of omission. It was an active, creative fiction he was writing in real time. "Sure," I said. "I'll get your beer." I walked into the kitchen. I opened the fridge. I stared at the rows of IPA bottles. I didn't grab a beer. I grabbed my car keys from the counter. I left my phone charger in the car, I called out. "Okay, hurry back. Kickoff is in 5, he shouted. I walked out the front door, down the driveway, and got into my Toyota Camry. I locked the doors. I rolled up the windows, and then I just screamed. I screamed until my throat felt like I had swallowed broken glass. I screamed until I was lightheaded. Then I put the car in reverse and backed out. I wasn't going anywhere. I just needed to be not there. I drove a block away and parked under the shade of a massive oak tree. I needed to think. I needed to calculate. The silence in the car was heavy. The air conditioning blasted against my face, drying the sweat that had pooled at my hairline. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. Focus, Elena. Focus. I needed to understand the scope of the damage. It wasn't just the lie about the baby. If he was lying about this, what else was fake? I grabbed my phone and opened my banking app. Face ID let me in. The little loading circle spun for a second that felt like a year, before revealing the numbers. Checking balance, $412. Savings balance, $2,100. I felt sick, physically, violently sick. I scrolled through the transaction history. The bridal boutique, $3,000 for the dress. The florist deposit, $2,000. The venue final payment, $8,000. The travel agency for the Greek honeymoon, $6,000. I had drained my savings. I had dipped into my emergency fund. I had maxed out my credit card, which currently sat at a balance of $9,000. Caleb had promised to pay me back. That was the deal. "My money is tied up in the closing costs for the house," he had said. "Just cover the vendor deposits on your card for the points, babe, and I'll write you a check as soon as the escrow clears." Escrow. I squeezed my eyes shut. Was there even a house? He showed me photos. He showed me a listing. But had I seen a contract? Had I seen a single piece of paper with his name on it alongside a title company's letterhead? No. "Oh my God," I whispered to the empty car. "I'm broke." I wasn't just marrying a liar. I was financing him. I was paying for the privilege of being deceived. I had spent nearly $30,000 on a celebration of a fraud. A thought crept in, insidious and terrifying, the sunk cost fallacy. My brain, trying to protect itself from trauma, whispered, "Maybe you can still go through with the wedding. Maybe you can fix him. If you cancel now, you lose all that money. You lose the deposits. You lose the flight. You lose face in front of 200 people." I looked at the dashboard clock. It was 2 in the afternoon. The wedding was Saturday. Today was Wednesday. If I canceled now, I got 0 refunds. If I went through with it, I would be legally bound to a man who viewed me as an incubator for an imaginary family and an ATM for his lifestyle. "No," I said aloud. "No sinking, no costs." But I needed to be sure. I needed absolute, irrefutable confirmation. The document in the drawer was 12 years old. Maybe miracles happened. Maybe he was cured. Maybe he did freeze sperm before the chemo and just forgot to mention it because he's an idiot. I needed an expert. I pulled up Google Maps and searched for Fertility Clinics Austin. The first result was the place from the letterhead, Austin Fertility Center. I pressed call. "Austin Fertility Center. This is Sarah. How can I help you?" The voice was kind, professional, the voice of a woman who spent her day delivering both miracles and tragedies. "Hi," I said. My voice was shaking. I cleared my throat and tried to channel my teacher voice. Authoritative, calm, factual. I have a general medical question. I'm not a patient yet, but my fiancé and I are discussing options. Of course, Sarah said. I can try to answer general questions, or I can schedule a consultation for you. If a man was diagnosed with azoospermia, specifically 0 sperm count following chemotherapy for testicular cancer, is there any chance of natural recovery 12 years later? Like any chance at all? There was a pause on the line. I could hear the click of a keyboard in the background. I'm not a doctor, Sarah said, her tone shifting to something more guarded. But generally speaking, if the diagnosis was permanent sterility due to cytotoxic treatment, natural conception it would be medically classified as impossible. Usually, in those cases, we look at donor sperm or adoption. Medically classified as impossible. And, I pushed, if someone had that diagnosis, would they know? I mean, would a doctor make it clear? Oh, absolutely, Sarah said. Post-chemo fertility analysis is very thorough. A patient would have multiple follow-ups. They would be counseled extensively on banking sperm before treatment if possible, and the outcomes afterwards. It's a very standard part of the oncology protocol. Okay, I whispered. Thank you. You've been very helpful. Would you like to schedule an appointment to discuss donor options? No, I said. I think I have all the information I need. I hung up. He knew. He absolutely, 100% knew. He had sat in an office just like Sarah's, listened to a doctor in a white coat tell him he would never father a child, and then he had walked out into the world and decided to find a woman stupid enough to believe otherwise. I looked at the phone. I wanted to throw it through the windshield, but I couldn't stop there. The lie about the baby was the cornerstone, but the financial structure was crumbling too. Where was he going when he said he was working late? Why was he always short on cash, despite having a director title? I remembered Tuesday night. 2 days ago, he said he had a late strategy meeting with the VP. He came home at 11, smelling of mints and something floral. Perfume? No. I had told myself it was the office air freshener. I started the car. I wasn't going back to the house to fight. I was going back to the house to dig. I parked the Camry down the street again, terrified he would see me pulling in and ask where the beer was. I crept up the driveway like a burglar in my own home. I went around the side of the house to the large rolling trash bins. It was trash day tomorrow, so they were full. I opened the lid. The smell hit me instantly. Rotting melon, coffee grounds, wet cardboard. It was disgusting. It was humiliating. I was a woman with a master's degree, a woman who taught AP biology, and I was standing in 90-degree heat, sifting through garbage like a raccoon. This is insane, I muttered. You are a crazy person, Elena. But I kept digging. I moved a trash bag filled with paper towels. I saw a crumpled fast food bag. Then, near the bottom, a small white ball of paper. I reached in. Something slimy touched my wrist, a banana peel, and I gagged, retching dryly, but I grabbed the paper. I smoothed it out against the side of the bin. It was a receipt. Justine's Brasserie. Date, Tuesday, July 10th. Time, 8:45 p.m. Guests, 2. Justine's was expensive, romantic, French. Not the kind of place you go for a strategy meeting with your male VP. I scanned the items. Steak frite, moules frite, bottle of Bordeaux, $120. Chocolate mousse, $120 for wine, on a Tuesday. When he couldn't pay for his own passport renewal fee, I looked at the bottom of the receipt. Card ending in 4112. That wasn't his debit card. That wasn't his usual credit card. That was a card I didn't know existed. I stared at the timestamp. 8:45. At 8:45 on Tuesday, I had texted him, "Miss you, hope the meeting goes well." He had replied, "Grinding away, dreaming of you." He was eating chocolate mousse with someone else while dreaming of me. I shoved the receipt into my bra. I needed a shower. I needed a lawyer. But first, I needed a name. I needed to know who was eating that moose. I couldn't do this alone. I was a teacher, not a spy. I needed a professional. Foster Investigations was located in a strip mall off Lamar, sandwiched between a vape shop and a title loan place. It didn't look like the movies. It looked like a place where dreams went to die of emphysema. I walked in. A bell jingled aggressively. The man behind the desk didn't look like a noir detective. He looked like a retired accountant who had seen too much. He was wearing a polo shirt that was slightly too tight and reading a fishing magazine. "Help you?" he asked, not looking up. "I need to hire you," I said. "Immediately. It's an emergency." He put the magazine down. He looked at my engagement ring, then at my face. He sighed, a long, weary sound that told me I was the third crying fiancé he had seen this week. "Sit down," he said. "I'm Foster. What's the job? Cheating husband? Missing kid? Background check?" "Cheating fiancé," I corrected, sitting on the plastic chair. "And financial fraud. And possibly pathological lying." "Okay," Foster said, pulling a notepad closer. "Name?" "Caleb Wade." "Wedding date?" "Saturday," I said. Foster whistled low. "Saturday. That's 3 days. You're cutting it close, sweetheart. Rush jobs cost extra." "I don't care," I said. "I need to know who he was with on Tuesday night. I need to know who the guest was at Justine's Brasserie. I need to know if he has any secret credit cards. And—" I hesitated. This was the part that made me feel truly sick. "And I need you to look into my family," I said. Foster raised an eyebrow. "Your family?" "My cousin," I said. "Meredith. She's pregnant. She's been weird around Caleb. And my brother, Arthur. He's been weird too. They're all acting strange. I have a feeling it's all connected." It sounded paranoid. It sounded like the plot of a bad soap opera, but the biology teacher in me knew that ecosystems were interconnected. If one predator was lying, the others probably adapted. "Okay," Foster said. "Standard retainer is $1,500. Rush fee is another $1,500. $3,000 total. Cash or cashier's check only." $3,000. That was the rest of my savings. That was everything. If I paid him, I had $0 left for rent if I left Caleb. I would be destitute. I thought about the receipt in my bra. I thought about the azoospermia report. I thought about Caleb's face when he told me to trust the process. I opened my purse. I took out my checkbook. I wrote the check for $3,000. My hand shook so hard the signature looked like a seismograph of an earthquake. "Find everything," I said, handing him the check. "I don't want guesses. I want proof. I want photos. I want timestamps." Foster took the check. He looked at it, then at me. "If I find what you think I'm going to find," he said softly, "are you going to use it? Or are you going to cry and marry him anyway? Because I don't like wasting my time." I looked him dead in the eye. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, hard knot of fury in my chest. "I'm not going to marry him," I said. "I'm going to destroy him." The air conditioning in the Mexican restaurant was set to Arctic, but I was sweating through my silk blouse. It was a family celebration dinner, a mandatory event orchestrated by my mother to celebrate the merging of the clans. In reality, it was a hostage situation with excellent queso. I sat across from Meredith, my cousin, my maid of honor, the woman who had held my hair back when I had food poisoning in college. She was wearing a loose floral dress that draped over her 5-month baby bump, looking like a fertility goddess painted by someone who didn't understand anatomy. "Here's to the happy couple." Arthur, my brother, raised his margarita glass. His hand was shaking slightly. I watched the lime wedge tremble on the rim. Why was he nervous? Arthur was never nervous. He was a commercial real estate broker. He sold overpriced condos to tech bros for a living. He thrived on confidence. "To Elena and Caleb," Meredith chirped. clinking her water glass against Arthur's margarita. I watched their hands. They lingered near each other on the table, not touching, but magnetically aligned. When Arthur set his glass down, he placed it inches from Meredith's plate, a violation of personal space that usually signals intimacy. My brain started its frantic calculations. Observation. Arthur is sweating. Observation. Meredith won't look me in the eye. Observation. Caleb is beaming like he won the lottery. I can't believe it's only 3 days away, Caleb said, reaching over to squeeze my hand. His palm was clammy. And then, Greece. But honestly, I'm more excited about getting back and settling down. You know? He looked at Meredith's stomach. A look of such profound, longing ownership that I almost choked on a tortilla chip. You're going to be such a great dad, Caleb, Meredith said softly. Her voice had a tremor in it. Elena is so lucky. Lucky. The word echoed in my skull. I felt a spike of adrenaline. She knew. She had to know. You don't tell a sterile man he's going to be a great dad unless you're part of the delusion. We're all lucky, Arthur said, staring into his drink. Family is everything, right? Right, I said. My voice sounded jagged. Family. I looked at Arthur. He had the same nose as me, the same dark eyes. We grew up sharing a bathroom, fighting over the remote, keeping each other's secrets. And now he was sitting there, vibrating with anxiety, while our cousin carried a baby that my fiancé was claiming as his future. I needed to test the waters. I needed to see if the shark would bite. So, Meredith, I said, keeping my tone light, conversational, have you decided on a name yet? You've been so secretive. Meredith froze. Her hand went instinctively to her belly. Oh, you know, I'm still debating. It's hard doing this alone. She cast a quick, panicked glance at Arthur. It lasted maybe a microsecond, but I saw it. I saw the desperate plea for help in her eyes. It takes a village, Caleb said, puffing out his chest. We'll be there for you, Mir. You know that. Uncle Caleb's going to spoil that kid rotten. Uncle Caleb. I felt the nausea rise again. This wasn't just a lie. It was a grotesque role-playing game. Caleb was playing the benevolent uncle, but he was funding the whole production. I had seen the Venmo transactions on his phone over his shoulder, hundreds of dollars sent to M for groceries and rent help. I looked at my brother. Arthur, you've been quiet. How's the new listing downtown? Fine, Arthur snapped. It's fine, just busy. Markets are volatile. He took a long gulp of his margarita. He was drinking too fast. He was hiding something. I needed a sample. I needed biological proof. If my theory was right, if the incestuous mistake theory held water, I needed Arthur's DNA. I'm going to the ladies' room, I announced, standing up. Hurry back, Caleb said. Fajitas are coming. I walked away, my heels clicking on the tile. I didn't go to the bathroom. I stopped at the waiter station and watched them from behind a decorative cactus. Arthur leaned in. He whispered something to Meredith. Meredith shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. Caleb was oblivious, checking his phone, probably texting the other woman, the one he out-moose with. They were a triad of betrayal, and I was the one paying the bill. After dinner, I drove to my mother's house. Arthur was staying there while his condo was being fumigated, or so he said. I knew now that fumigation was probably code for, I need to save money because I'm secretly supporting a baby. My mother met me at the door, buzzing with wedding energy. Elena, did you bring the final seating chart? I had an idea about moving Aunt Linda to table 6. It's in the car, Mom, I lied. I actually really need to use the bathroom. The restaurant disagreed with me. Oh, honey, I told you not to eat the jalapenos. Go, go! I ran up the stairs. The house smelled like lemon pledge and childhood. I passed my old room, now a guest room filled with boxes of wedding favors I had paid for. I went straight to the hall bathroom, the one Arthur was using. I locked the door. I leaned against it, breathing hard. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. This was insane. I was a biology teacher. I respected privacy. I taught ethics. And here I was, about to loot my brother's toiletries. Do it. You have to know. I opened his toiletry bag. It was sitting on the counter, unzipped. Men are so careless. I saw his razor, his deodorant, and there, buried under a tube of toothpaste, was his hairbrush, a black plastic brush full of dark hair. I pulled a Ziploc bag from my purse. I had brought it specifically for this. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the brush. I pulled a clump of hair from the bristles. I needed the follicles. I needed the root cells. I checked the strands. Yes, little white bulbs at the end. Viable DNA. I shoved the hair into the bag and sealed it. I felt dirty. I felt like a criminal. "What are you doing?" I whispered to myself in the mirror. "You are stealing your brother's genetic material." I stared at my reflection. I looked pale, ghostly. My eyes were wide and terrified. This was the face of a woman who was peeling back the wallpaper of her life and finding black mold everywhere. I put the brush back. I zipped the bag. I flushed the toilet to simulate usage. Then I saw it. In the small wastebasket next to the toilet, a crumpled receipt. I shouldn't look. I had the hair. I should leave. But I was already a criminal. What was one more offense? I reached in and uncrumpled it. Super 8 Motel, North I-35. Check-in July 4th. Check-out July 5th. July 4th, Independence Day. While I was at a barbecue with Caleb, pretending we were a happy couple, Arthur was at a motel. Who spends the 4th of July in a Super 8 off the interstate unless they are hiding? I took a picture of the receipt. Then I shoved it back into the trash, burying it under a tissue. I unlocked the door and walked out. The Ziploc bag in my purse felt radioactive. Thursday morning, 2 days before the wedding. I was at school, ostensibly to clean out my classroom for the summer deep clean, but really because I couldn't be in the same house as Caleb. I was scrubbing a beaker in the lab sink when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I dried my hands on my skirt, not caring about the water stains. I answered. "Hello? It's Foster," the gravelly voice said. "I sent you an email. Secure server link. Password is your birth year, spelled out in words." "Did you find something?" I asked. My voice echoed in the empty classroom. "I found everything, kid. You sitting down?" "I'm standing." "Sit down." I sank onto a lab stool. "Tell me." "The receipt you found was the tip of the iceberg," Foster said. "I ran the credit card associated with that motel stay. It's Arthur's card. But here's the kicker. I pulled the security footage from the motel parking lot. My guy has a back door into their system. And it's Arthur and Meredith. They aren't just cousins, Elena. They're involved." I closed my eyes. Hearing it confirmed was different than suspecting it. Suspecting it was a hypothesis. Confirmation was a law of nature. "Are you sure?" I whispered. "Maybe they were just talking?" "Maybe he's helping her?" Foster snorted. "People don't rent hourly rate rooms to talk, Elena, and they certainly don't kiss like that in the parking lot if they're just cousins. I've got photos. High resolution. You want to see them?" "Yes," I said. "I have to see them." "Check your email. Also, that hair sample you dropped off this morning, I'm running it against a sample I lifted from Meredith's trash, a soda can. But frankly, with these photos, you don't need a DNA test to know what's happening. The math works out. 5 months pregnant? Count back 5 months. There's a motel charge for February 14th, Valentine's Day." Valentine's Day. I remembered Valentine's Day. Caleb had taken me to dinner. Meredith had said she was sick and staying home. Arthur had said he had a client closing. They were together. "Oh my God," I choked out. "There's more," Foster said. "Caleb knows." "What?" "I found text messages. Deleted ones, but I recovered them." Caleb to Arthur. "She can't find out. We stick to the plan. I'm the dad on paper. You're the dad in blood. We take it to the grave." The room spun. The Bunsen burners, the periodic table, the skeleton in the corner, it all blurred into a gray smear. Caleb wasn't just a liar, he was a co-conspirator. He was covering for them. Why? Because he was sterile. Because he wanted a baby so badly he was willing to adopt his fiancé's brother's incestuous child and pass it off as his own miracle? It was twisted. It was biblical in its depravity. "I have to go," I said. I hung up. I dropped the phone. I ran to the teacher's lounge bathroom. I barely made it to the stall before I threw up. I retched until my stomach was empty, heaving against the cold porcelain. I sat on the tile floor, wiping my mouth with rough brown paper towels. They were all in on it. My fiancé, my brother, my cousin. I was the only one who didn't know the script. I was the audience. "No," I whispered, standing up. I looked at myself in the mirror. My mascara was running. I looked like a raccoon. I'm not the audience anymore. I'm the director. I sat at my desk, the laptop screen glowing in the dim light of the classroom. I had opened the file Foster sent. Folder 1, Surveillance. Photo after photo. Arthur and Meredith entering the motel. Arthur's hand on the small of her back. Meredith laughing, her head thrown back. A kiss near the vending machine. It was undeniable. It was gross. Folder 2, the texts. Screenshots of a group chat named The Project. Arthur. She's asking questions about names. Meredith. I almost slipped up at dinner. Caleb. Calm down, she suspects nothing. She's too focused on the wedding details. Just keep playing the part. Once we're married, it's done. The baby is mine legally. Legally. He was trapping me. Once we were married in the state of Texas, a child born to the wife is presumed to be the husband's. He was locking me into a legal contract that would force me to raise my brother's child. And then, the final document. The one Foster had just uploaded, Paternity Probability Report. Subject A, Arthur Barrett, hair follicle. Subject B, prenatal cell-free DNA result, recovered from Meredith's trash. Foster had found an old report Meredith had thrown away. She must have done a non-invasive prenatal paternity test weeks ago. Result, alleged father Arthur Barrett cannot be excluded as the biological father. Probability of paternity, 99.9%. It was the smoking gun, the nail in the coffin. I stared at the number, 99.9. I thought about Arthur, my big brother, the one who taught me how to ride a bike, the one who beat up a kid who bullied me in 3rd grade. How could he do this? How could he sleep with our cousin, get her pregnant, and then conspire to make me raise the baby with a man who knew he was shooting blanks? It was a betrayal so deep it didn't just hurt. It reorganized my entire understanding of human nature. I felt a coldness settle over me. The panic was gone. The nausea was gone. All that was left was geometry. Angles, trajectories, impact points. I needed to organize this. I needed to present this. I wasn't just going to cancel the wedding. I was going to host a symposium on their treachery. The FedEx office on South Congress smelled of warm paper and ozone. It was Friday morning, 24 hours to go. I stood at the self-service copier, feeding the machine my life's work. Copy 1, the medical history, the sterility diagnosis, the cancer treatment, the proof that Caleb was a biological dead end. Copy 2, the motel logs, the photos, the receipts, the visual evidence of the affair. Copy 3, the group chat, the conspiracy, the project. I collated them. I stapled them. I bought 3 thick cream-colored envelopes, expensive ones. The kind you use for wedding invitations. I slid the packets inside. Envelope 1, for the priest. Envelope 2, for the mother of the groom. Envelope 3, for the bride. I sealed them with a glue stick, pressing down hard, smoothing the edges until they were perfect. The guy behind the counter was watching me. He was young, maybe 20, with a nose ring. Big project? He asked, nodding at the stack. You could say that, I said, my voice eerily calm. Thesis? Something like that, I said. It's a study on the reproductive habits of liars. He blinked. Cool. Good luck with the defense. Oh, I smiled, a sharp, dangerous smile. I'm not defending anything. I'm prosecuting. I paid with my credit card, another $15 added to the debt mountain. It didn't matter. Money was abstract now. Justice was concrete. St. Mary's Cathedral was silent and imposing. The smell of incense and old wood usually calmed me, but today it smelled like a courtroom. I found Father Paul in the sacristy, polishing a chalice. He was a kind man, elderly with eyes that had seen too many confessions. Elena, he smiled, where is Caleb? Rehearsal isn't until 5. Caleb is working, I lied. Father, I need to ask you something. It's unconventional. I held the 3 envelopes in my hands. They felt heavy, like bricks of gold. Is everything all right, child? You look pale. Father, I started, stepping closer. I have a confession, but it's not mine. I placed the envelopes on the table next to the holy water. These contain information that is vital to the sanctity of the sacrament we are about to perform. I have reason to believe, serious reason to believe, that there are impediments to this marriage, canonical impediments. Father Paul frowned, putting down the polishing cloth. Impediments. Elena, if you have doubts, we should postpone. No, I said firmly. We cannot postpone. The truth must come out in the light. I need you to promise me something. It's a matter of conscience. What is it? Tomorrow, I said, my voice steady. If there is an objection, if anyone speaks up, or if I give you a signal, I need you to open these envelopes and read what is inside, to the congregation. Read them? Elena, I cannot. You must, I interrupted. It is the only way to save my soul from entering a fraudulent union. If you don't read them, I will, and I will do it without the grace of the Church. Please, Father, if you care about the truth, you will hold these. Just hold them, and if the moment comes, you will know. He looked at me. He looked at the envelopes. He saw the desperation in my eyes, the absolute terrifying certainty. This is highly irregular, he murmured. So is sin, I said. Please? He sighed, a long, heavy exhale. He reached out and took the envelopes. He tucked them into the pocket of his cassock. I will hold them, he said, but I pray I do not have to open them. I pray you do, I said, because the truth shall set us free, right? Right, he whispered. I walked out of the church. The trap was set. The actors were in place. All that was left was the performance. I sat on the floor of my empty living room, the lights off, watching the shadows of the oak tree outside dance across the wall like grasping fingers. In my hand was a glass of cheap Chardonnay, the only alcohol left in the house after I'd cleared the liquor cabinet for the reception stock. The wine tasted like vinegar and regret, but I drank it anyway because I needed to numb the part of my brain that was currently screaming at me to run. My phone buzzed on the floorboards, the screen illuminating the darkness with a harsh, artificial blue light. I looked down. It was a message from Caleb. Can't sleep. Too excited. Tomorrow is the first day of the rest of our lives. Love you, Mrs. Wade. I stared at the words until they blurred. Mrs. Wade. He was using my future name like a branding iron. He wasn't excited about marrying me. He was excited about closing the deal. He was excited about the legal shield I was about to provide for his secret life. I wanted to throw the phone through the window. I wanted to type back, I know about the cancer. I know about the motel. I know you're sterile. I wanted to drive over to his condo and scream until the police came, but I didn't. I took a slow, burning sip of wine and forced my fingers to type. Me neither. See you at the altar. I hit send and felt a wave of nausea roll through me. It was a physical revulsion, a rejection of my own complicity. I was lying to the liar. I was playing a game of chicken with a sociopath, and he didn't even know I was in the car. I closed my eyes and leaned my head back against the couch. I thought about the 3 envelopes sitting in Father Paul's cassock pocket. They were like landmines I had planted in holy ground. Was I really going to do this? Was I really going to blow up my life, my family, my reputation in front of 200 people? Yes. Because the alternative was worse. The alternative was a lifetime of looking at a child I knew was my brother's and pretending it was my husband's. The alternative was being the useful idiot in their twisted little play. I drained the glass. The silence in the house was deafening. It wasn't peaceful. It was the heavy, pressurized silence before a tornado touches down. Saturday morning arrived with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. The sun was too bright, the birds were too loud, and my stomach felt like it was full of angry hornets. I sat in the high chair in my kitchen while a makeup artist named Chloe applied layers of foundation to my face. She was humming a pop song, blissfully unaware that she was painting war paint onto a soldier, not a bride. "You have such great skin," Chloe chirped, dabbing concealer under my eyes. "A little puffy today, though. Did we have a few too many rehearsal margaritas?" "Something like that," I murmured. I stared at myself in the hand mirror. I looked like a stranger. The woman staring back had cold, hard eyes. She looked like someone who had seen a ghost and decided to kill it. "Well, you're going to be the most beautiful bride St. Mary's has ever seen," Chloe said, misting my face with setting spray. "Caleb is going to faint when he sees you." He might, I thought, but not because of the dress. My phone pinged on the counter, a notification from my bank. I glanced at it, expecting a well-wish text from a friend. Instead, the screen read, "Transaction alert, airline charge, $1,200. Upgrade to first class." My heart stopped, then hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I hadn't upgraded our seats. I couldn't afford to upgrade our seats. I had $400 to my name. I unlocked the phone and opened the app. The charge had gone through at 6 in the morning. Caleb. He must have logged into the airline account and upgraded us using the credit card on file, my credit card. He was spending money I didn't have on a trip he knew was a lie, hours before the wedding. The audacity was breathtaking. It was almost impressive in its total lack of conscience. He thought he had me. He thought the ring was on the finger, the trap was shut, and now he could just start spending. "Is everything okay?" Chloe asked, pausing with a lipstick wand in midair. "You look like you just saw a spider." "Just a last-minute bill," I said, my voice eerily steady. "Nothing to worry about." I put the phone down. I didn't cancel the charge. I would deal with the debt later. Right now, that charge was just more fuel for the fire. It was another log on the pyre I was about to light. The limousine ride to the church was a blur of white tulle and nervous chatter from my bridesmaids. They were drinking champagne from mini bottles, laughing about bachelorette party memories that felt like they happened in a different lifetime. We pulled up to St. Mary's. The stone facade loomed over us, ancient and judgmental. I stepped out of the car, the heat hitting me instantly. Even at 11 in the morning, the Texas sun was merciless. I adjusted my veil, feeling the weight of the fabric dragging at my head. The doors were open. I could hear the organist playing Bach. The smell of lilies wafted out. Thousands of dollars of white lilies that I had paid for. They smelled cloying, suffocating, like a funeral parlor. I walked into the vestibule. The guests were already seated. I could see the backs of their heads, rows and rows of people I loved, people I worked with, people I was about to traumatize. And then I saw them. In the front row, on the bride's side, sat my family. My mother, looking anxious in her blue silk suit, adjusting her hat, and next to her, Meredith. She was wearing a pale yellow maternity dress that highlighted her belly. She had a hand resting protectively on the mound, looking for all the world like the Madonna. She was whispering something to Arthur, who sat beside her. Arthur looked green. He was pulling at his collar, his eyes darting around the church like a trapped animal. He knew. Deep down, he had to know that this house of cards was shaking. I felt a sudden, sharp pang of grief. That was my brother. That was my cousin. These were the people who were supposed to be my safety net, and instead they were the ones cutting the ropes. Then I looked toward the altar. Caleb was there. He was standing with his best man, Tucker. Caleb looked perfect. He was smiling, nodding at someone in the second row. He looked relaxed. He looked like a man who had successfully pulled off the heist of the century. I felt my hands curl into fists at my sides. The grief evaporated, replaced by a cold, crystalline rage. "Enjoy it, Caleb," I thought. "Enjoy the view. It's the last time you'll ever smile in this town." The music changed. The canon in D began its slow, inevitable build. My mother kissed my cheek and hurried to her seat. The bridesmaids started their walk, one by one, disappearing into the nave. Then it was just me. The coordinator, a frazzled woman with a headset, gave me a thumbs up. "Go time, beautiful. Smile." I stepped into the doorway. The congregation stood up. 200 faces turned toward me. I saw the collective intake of breath. I knew what they saw. A radiant bride, a fairy tale ending, a woman lucky enough to marry a handsome, successful man. I started walking. Left foot, right foot, breathe. Every step felt like walking underwater. The music was too loud. The rustle of fabric was deafening. I locked eyes with Caleb at the end of the aisle. He started to cry. Actual tears. He wiped his cheek with a handkerchief, looking so overcome with emotion that a few bridesmaids audibly sighed. It was a master class in manipulation. He wasn't crying because he loved me. He was crying because he was relieved. He was crying because he thought he had won. He thought he had secured his nursemaid, his bank account, his cover story. I kept walking. I forced the corners of my mouth up into a smile. It felt like stretching rubber. "You are a shark," I told myself. "You are a predator in white satin. Do not falter." I reached the altar. I handed my bouquet to my maid of honor, who wasn't Meredith, thank God, but my friend Sarah from college. I stepped up next to Caleb. He reached out and took my hands. His palms were warm and dry. He squeezed my fingers. "You look incredible," he whispered, his voice thick with fake emotion. "You have no idea," I whispered back. Father Paul cleared his throat. He looked nervous. He glanced at his pocket, then at me, then at the congregation. "Dearly beloved," he began, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling, "we are gathered here today to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony." He went through the opening prayers. The scripture readings seemed to drag on for hours. Love is patient. Love is kind. I wanted to laugh. Love isn't patient. Love is evidence gathering. Love is a paternity test. Finally, we reached the moment. The precipice. "If anyone here presents," Father Paul said, pausing to look over his reading glasses, "any just cause why these two may not lawfully be joined in marriage, let them speak now or forever, hold their peace." The silence that followed was absolute. You could hear the dust motes floating in the sunbeams. I tightened my grip on Caleb's hands. I was ready to give the signal. I was ready to nod at Father Paul, but I didn't have to. From the front row, there was a rustle of fabric, a gasp. Meredith stood up. She didn't look at me. She looked straight at Caleb. Her face was flushed, her eyes wild and wet with tears. She looked like a woman who had cracked under the pressure of her own lies. "Stop!" she cried out. Her voice was shrill, cutting through the silence like a knife. The entire church turned. Caleb froze. His grip on my hands turned to iron. "Meredith," he hissed, "what are you doing?" "I can't let you do this," Meredith sobbed, stepping into the aisle. She cradled her belly with both hands, presenting it to the room like evidence. "I can't let you marry her, Caleb, not when you have responsibilities to me." The congregation erupted in whispers. My mother stood up, her face white as a sheet. "Meredith, sit down!" "No!" Meredith shouted, pointing a shaking finger at Caleb. "He's the father. He's the father of my baby. We've been together for months. I can't let him lie to Elena anymore." It was a brilliant performance. It was exactly what a mistress would say to trap a man. She was playing the victim. She was trying to blow up the wedding to claim him, or maybe she just couldn't handle the guilt. But she had just walked right into my trap. Caleb looked terrified. Not the terror of a man caught cheating, the terror of a man whose script had just been set on fire. He looked at Arthur. Arthur was staring at the floor, refusing to make eye contact. "Meredith, stop," Caleb begged, his voice cracking. "You don't know what you're saying. You're hormonal. You're upset." "I'm pregnant with your child," she screamed. I let go of Caleb's hands. I took a step back. I looked at Meredith, then at Caleb, then at the congregation. "Is that true, Caleb?" I asked. My voice was calm, dangerously calm. "Is that your baby?" "No," Caleb shouted. "No, Elena, I swear." "She's crazy. I never touched her." "He's lying," Meredith wailed. I turned to Father Paul. He was standing there, clutching his book, looking at me with wide, fearful eyes. "Father," I said, my voice projecting clearly to the back of the room, "I believe you have an envelope labeled Number 1. Would you please open it?" Father Paul hesitated. The room went deathly silent again. Meredith stopped sobbing for a second, confused. Caleb looked at the priest, then at me. "Elena, what is this?" Caleb whispered. "What are you doing?" "Father," I said again, harder this time. "Read it." Father Paul reached into his pocket. He pulled out the thick cream envelope. The sound of the paper tearing was loud in the microphone. He pulled out the folded medical documents. He adjusted his glasses. He looked at the paper, then looked up at Caleb with a mixture of pity and confusion. "Read it," I commanded. "The diagnosis and the date." Father Paul cleared his throat. "Patient name, Caleb James Wade," he read. His voice wavered slightly. "Date of report, October 12th, 2013. Caleb went pale. All the blood drained from his face, leaving him looking like a wax figure. He tried to reach for the paper. "Give me that, that's private." I blocked him with my arm. "Continue, Father." "Diagnosis," Father Paul read, "testicular carcinoma, post-treatment analysis." He paused, scanning the page. "Semen analysis result, azoospermia, sperm count, 0, motility, none. Conclusion, permanent sterility." The words hung in the air. Permanent sterility. I turned to the congregation. I saw my mother's mouth drop open. I saw the bridesmaids exchanging horrified looks. Then I turned to Meredith. She was standing in the aisle, frozen. Her hand was still on her belly, but the defiant, tragic mistress act had crumbled. She looked like a deer in the headlights of a semi-truck. "Did you hear that, Meredith?" I asked, my voice conversational, almost pleasant. "Permanent sterility, 0 sperm count, since 2013. I looked back at Caleb. He was trembling. "So," I said, looking between the two of them, "if Caleb is sterile and has been for 12 years, then that baby you're carrying can't be his." I let the implication land. I watched the math happen in 200 brains simultaneously. "Which means," I continued, "either you're lying about who the father is, or Caleb is the victim of a miracle." I paused. "But I don't believe in miracles. I believe in biology." "Elena," Caleb croaked, "please." "Oh, we're not done," I said, gesturing to Father Paul. "Envelope number 2, please." The silence in the cathedral was no longer stunned. It was curdled. It had a texture now, thick and heavy like soured milk. Meredith was still standing in the aisle, but she had shrunk in on herself, her hands sliding from her belly to cover her face. Caleb was panting, his eyes darting between me and the exit signs, looking for an escape route that didn't exist. "Envelope number 2, I repeated, my voice cutting through the humid air. Father Paul's hands were shaking visibly now. He looked at the second envelope as if it were a live grenade. He didn't want to open it. He wanted to go back to the sacristy and pray this away, but he was a man of his word, and perhaps a man who realized that stopping now would only leave the wound infected. He tore the seal. Inside were the photographs. Glossy, high-resolution prints on 8x10 cardstock. I had chosen the clearest ones. "What is this?" Father Paul asked, squinting at the first image. "These are photographs." "Describe them, Father," I said, "for those in the back." He hesitated. "It appears to be a motel. The Super 8 off the interstate." "And who is in the photos?" He shuffled them. "It is Arthur Barrett and Meredith Barrett." A ripple went through the pews. My mother let out a sound that was half gasp, half shriek. Arthur, my brother, didn't move. He sat like a stone statue, staring at the altar railing, his face drained of all color. "And what are they doing, Father?" "They are—" Father Paul stopped. He looked at Arthur, then at me, his eyes pleading. "They are embracing, intimately." The word hung there, intimately. "Kissing," I corrected him, "in the parking lot of a motel that charges by the hour, on Valentine's Day, on the 4th of July, on dates when Arthur told us he was working and Meredith told us she was sick." I turned to Caleb. He had stopped trembling and gone strangely still. He wasn't looking at me with anger anymore. He was looking at me with a terrifying, pitying sadness. "Elena," he said softly, stepping toward me, "stop, please. You don't understand. I was trying to protect you." "Protect me?" The audacity took my breath away. "Protect me?" I asked. "By marrying me under false pretenses? By letting me raise my brother's child thinking it was yours? Because you wanted a family," he implored, his voice rising, gaining that smooth, persuasive cadence he used in marketing pitches. "You wanted it so bad, Elena, and I couldn't give it to you. I'm broken, okay? I'm broken inside, but Arthur made a mistake, a terrible mistake, and we thought we could fix two problems at once. We could give the baby a home. We could give you the child you dreamed of. It was an act of love, Elena. Twisted, maybe, but love." My stomach lurched. This was the toxic benevolence. He was rewriting history in real time, painting himself as the martyr who sacrificed his integrity to give me a baby. He was trying to make the congregation feel sorry for him. "An act of love," I repeated, letting the words taste like ash in my mouth. "You call conspiring with my brother to hide incest an act of love?" "It's not incest," Meredith screamed from the aisle. "We're cousins. It's legal in Texas." "It is socially repugnant," I shouted back, breaking my calm for the first time, "and morally bankrupt, and you let me pay for the wedding that was going to cover it up." "Envelope number 3, I said, pointing at Father Paul. "Finish it." Father Paul looked like he might faint. He opened the final packet. This one was thin, just a single sheet of paper with a graph and a lot of numbers. "The DNA results," I said. He read it. "Prenatal paternity test. Alleged father, Arthur Barrett. Probability of paternity, 99.9%. I looked at Arthur. He finally stood up. He didn't look ashamed. He looked annoyed. He looked like I had interrupted a business meeting with a trivial complaint. "Are you happy now?" Arthur asked, his voice low and venomous. "You ruined Mom's day. You humiliated the family. You couldn't just come to us privately. You had to do this." "Privately?" I laughed. It was a sharp, jagged sound. "You slept with our cousin Arthur. You got her pregnant, and then you let Caleb, my fiancé, take the fall for it so you wouldn't ruin your reputation at the firm. You let me plan a life around a lie because you were too cowardly to own your mess." "We were handling it," Arthur shouted. "We had a plan. You would have been a mother. Caleb would have been a father. The baby would have been safe. Everyone wins. But no, you had to play detective. You had to be the smartest person in the room." I am the smartest person in the room, I said, because I'm the only one walking out of here with my integrity. I looked at Caleb one last time. He was crying again, but now I saw it for what it was. Frustration. He wasn't mourning us. He was mourning the loss of his shield. He was mourning the fact that he was now just a sterile man with a ruined reputation, instead of the hero who saved the family. "The wedding is off," I announced to the room. "Obviously, there is no reception. But please feel free to take the flowers. I paid for them." I turned around. The walk back down the aisle was the longest journey of my life. It felt like walking through a minefield after the explosions had stopped. The air was filled with smoke and debris, invisible but choking. People were staring at me with open mouths. Some looked horrified. Some looked delighted by the drama. I saw my principal, Dr. Henderson, looking at me with a strange mixture of shock and respect. I saw my friend Sarah, the maid of honor, holding my bouquet like a weapon, glaring at Arthur. My mother stepped out of the pew as I passed. She grabbed my arm. Her grip was painful. "Elena," she hissed, "go back there, fix this." "You are making a scene." "The scene was made when your son slept with your niece," I whispered back, yanking my arm free. "I'm just turning on the lights." "You are selfish," she spat. "You always have been. Too smart for your own good. You destroyed this family." "No, Mom," I said, feeling a tear finally slide down my cheek. "I didn't destroy it. I just refused to be the glue holding your broken pieces together." I walked out the double doors. The heat hit me like a physical blow. The sun was blinding. I didn't stop. I walked down the stone steps, my heavy dress trailing on the dirty concrete. I walked past the limousine driver who was smoking a cigarette and looking confused. "We leaving?" he asked. "I am," I said. "You can take the groom. He's going to need a ride to hell." I walked to my Camry, parked around the corner where I had stashed it that morning. I fumbled with my keys, my hands shaking so violently I dropped them twice. I got in. I stripped off the veil and threw it in the back seat. I started the engine. The air conditioning blasted hot air into my face, but I didn't care. I just needed to drive. My hands were shaking so bad on the steering wheel that the car drifted slightly in the lane. I corrected it, gripping the leather until my fingers ached. "Breathe, Elena. Breathe." The adrenaline was crashing. My body was realizing what had just happened. I had blown up my life. I had no fiancé. I had no brother, effectively. My mother hated me. I was alone. But I was moving. I looked down at the fuel gauge. Half a tank. Enough to get to Bergstrom Airport. I wasn't going home. If I went home, Caleb might come there. Or Arthur. Or Mom. They would come with their excuses and their guilt trips and their gaslighting. I needed to be somewhere they couldn't reach me. I needed to be in Greece. I had paid for the tickets. I had paid for the hotels. It was non-refundable. I drove like a maniac, weaving through Saturday traffic on I-35. I pulled into the long-term parking lot. I grabbed the bag I had packed in secret the night before, jeans, t-shirts, my passport, my laptop. I left the wedding dress in the car. It took up the entire passenger seat, a ghost made of tulle and lace. I walked into the terminal wearing a white slip I had worn under the dress and a denim jacket I had pulled from the bag. I looked insane. I looked like a runaway bride, which, strictly speaking, I was. I went to the kiosk. I scanned my passport. Reservation found. Seat 1A first class. I stared at the screen. Caleb had upgraded the seats this morning. He had spent $1,200 of my money to sit in the front of the plane with me, celebrating his deception. "Well," I muttered, hitting the print boarding pass button. "At least the champagne is free." I went through security. The TSA agent looked at my puffy eyes and the diamond ring still on my finger. "Rough day?" she asked. "You have no idea," I said. "Can I leave the ring on?" "Nope. Metal detector will hate it." I took it off. It left a pale band of skin on my finger. I put it in the plastic bin. I watched it slide through the X-ray machine. I thought about leaving it there, just walking away, but I picked it up. It was worth money, and I was going to need money. The flight was a blur of complimentary wine and fitful sleep. I landed in Athens, transferred to the island hopper, and arrived in Santorini as the sun was setting. The hotel was carved into the cliffside, a whitewashed labyrinth of luxury that cost $600 a night. I checked in alone. The receptionist was a beautiful Greek woman with a sympathetic smile. She looked at my reservation. "Mr. and Mrs. Wade?" she asked. "Is your husband joining you later?" "No," I said. "My husband has been canceled due to technical difficulties. It's just me." "Oh," she said. She didn't ask further questions. She just handed me the key. "Enjoy your stay, Ms. Barrett," I said. "Just Ms. Barrett." The room was spectacular, a private plunge pool overlooking the caldera, rose petals scattered on the bed in the shape of a heart, a bottle of champagne on ice with a card that read, "Congratulations." I walked over to the bed and swept the rose petals onto the floor. I picked up the champagne bottle, popped the cork, and drank straight from the bottle. I sat on the terrace watching the ocean turn purple in the twilight. It was silent. No Caleb talking about football, no wedding coordinator shouting instructions, no Arthur lying about his life, just the wind and the sea. It should have been peaceful, but my brain wouldn't stop. The overthinking engine was revving back up. What are they doing right now? Are they at the house? Is Mom crying? Is Caleb spinning a story on Facebook? Is Arthur firing his lawyer? I felt the phantom vibration of my phone. I had turned it off in Austin. I hadn't looked at it for 14 hours. I needed to know. I needed to see the fallout. I went back into the room and plugged my phone into the charger. I pressed the power button. It buzzed immediately. Then it buzzed again and again. It vibrated across the marble table like an angry insect. 87 missed calls. 143 text messages. I scrolled through the names. Mom, 12, Caleb, 20, Arthur, 5, Meredith, 3, Sarah, best friend, 15. I ignored the family. I opened Sarah's text. "Sarah, you're a legend. I have never seen anything like that. Arthur tried to give a speech after you left and someone threw a hymnal at him. Call me when you land." I smiled, a real smile. Then I opened my email. There was a notification from Facebook. Caleb Wade posted a status update. I clicked the link. It was a photo of a sunset. Stock photography, clearly. The caption read, "Sometimes life throws you a curveball that hits you right in the heart. Elena and I have decided to part ways. It's a painful time, and there are two sides to every story, but I wish her the best. Please respect our privacy as we heal." Two sides to every story. I scoffed. There weren't two sides. There was a lie and there was the truth. I scrolled down to the comments. Most were confused. "What happened?" "So sorry, bro. Here for you." But then I saw it. A comment from a user named Julianne Hart. Julianne Hart. "Stay strong, Caleb. You're a good man who deserves someone who appreciates your heart. I'm here if you need anything. Zoe." Caleb Wade. "Thanks, Jules. Means a lot. Coffee soon. Julianne Hart." My brain snapped back to the receipt from Scene 5. Justine's Brasserie. Dinner for 2. I switched apps. I went to LinkedIn. I searched Julianne Hart Austin. Julianne Hart, marketing coordinator at Wade & Associates. She worked with him. I went to her Instagram. It was public. I scrolled back. 6 months ago, a photo of her and Caleb at a work conference in Dallas. They were standing too close. His hand was hovering near her waist. I scrolled back further. February, a photo of a latte art heart. Caption, "Love finding new spots with my favorite coworker." Location, the daily grind. That was the coffee shop near Caleb's condo. My blood ran cold. He wasn't just hiding Arthur's baby. He wasn't just sterile. He had a girlfriend, a whole other relationship running parallel to ours. He was planning to marry me, have me raise Arthur's baby, and keep Julianne on the side. I was the domestic cover. She was the fun. I looked at the "coffee soon" comment again, posted 2 hours ago. He wasn't mourning. He was pivoting. I opened my laptop. I created a new spreadsheet. Tab 1, wedding costs. Tab 2, the loans I gave him. Tab 3, the fraud. I wasn't just going to sue him for the ring. I was going to sue him for fraudulent inducement. I was going to sue him for every penny I had spent on a life he knew was impossible. I typed the header, "Timeline of Deception." I took a sip of warm champagne. The sadness was gone. The cold, hard scientist was back. Hypothesis: Caleb Wade is a serial fraudster. Experiment: destroy his financial life. Method: litigation. I sat on the balcony of my $600 a night hotel room, the Aegean Sea glittering like crushed diamonds below me. It was day 3 of my solitary honeymoon. I should have been relaxed. I should have been eating feta and pretending the world didn't exist. Instead, I was building a forensic accounting model that would make the IRS weep with joy. My laptop was open to a blank spreadsheet. I took a sip of warm white wine and cracked my knuckles. Row 1, the wedding. Row 2, the relationship. Row 3, the lies. I logged into my bank account again. I started from the beginning, 2 years ago. Date: August 12th. Transaction: dinner at Eddie V's. Amount: $300. I remembered that night. Caleb had forgotten his wallet in his gym bag. I paid. He promised to Venmo me. I checked his Venmo history. No payment received. Date: September 4th. Transaction: Home Depot. Amount: $400. Paint for his condo. Our future home, he had called it. I paid because his card was maxed out from the closing costs. I went line by line. Every dinner, every movie ticket. The time I paid for his car registration because he was liquid. The deposit on the venue. The florist. The photographer who was currently editing photos of a disaster. I added a column for emotional damages just to make myself feel better, but the hard numbers were bad enough. Total financial loss: $47,863. I stared at the number. That was a down payment on a house. That was a new car. That was my retirement fund. And then I cross-referenced it with the Julianne timeline I had built from Instagram. Date: February 14th. My expense: dinner for 2 at home, cooked by me. Cost: $50. Caleb's location: Super 8 Motel, with Arthur Meredith. Julianne's location: the daily grind with favorite coworker. He was double-dipping. No, triple-dipping. He was living 3 lives, and I was financing 2 of them while Arthur financed the 3rd. I felt a cold, jagged anger settle in my chest. It wasn't the hot rage of the wedding day. This was different. This was the cold, calculating fury of a scientist who has found a cancer and intends to cut it out with clean margins. I wasn't just a victim, I was a creditor, and I was going to collect. I returned to Austin a week later. I didn't go to my apartment. I went straight to Tessa's office. Tessa was my college roommate, a patent attorney who usually spent her days arguing about software IP, but she hated Caleb with the fire of 1,000 suns, which made her the perfect counsel for this specific crusade. "You look tan," Tessa said, pouring me a coffee, "and terrifying." "I feel terrifying," I said. I slid the flash drive across her mahogany desk. That contains a 40-page timeline of fraud, banking records, and medical proof that he knowingly induced me into a marriage he could not legally consummate in the way he promised. Tessa plugged it in. She clicked through the files. Her eyebrows climbed higher and higher until they practically disappeared into her hairline. "Elena," she whispered, "this isn't just a breakup. This is a RICO case. Can we sue him?" "Sue him? Honey, we can destroy him. Texas recognizes fraudulent inducement in marriage contracts. If he lied about a material fact, like, say, his ability to have children or the fact that he was sleeping with your brother's baby mama to get you to spend money, that is actionable civil fraud. And Julianne? I asked. The coworker? Alienation of affection is tricky, Tessa mused, tapping her pen against her chin. But if she knew he was engaged and helped him spend your money, we can name her as a co-defendant for conspiracy to commit civil theft. Do it, I said. I want them both served. I want them served at work. I want the process server to walk into their open plan office and hand them the papers while their boss is watching. Tessa smiled. It was a shark smile. I love it when you get vindictive. It suits you. It's not vindictive, I corrected her. It's peer review. 2 months later. The conference room at Tessa's firm smelled of lemon polish and fear. Caleb sat across the table. He looked terrible. He had lost weight, and his suit, the one I had helped pick out, hung loosely on his frame. His lawyer, a sweaty man named Harrison, who looked like he chased ambulances for sport, sat next to him. I sat next to Tessa. I had my teacher face on, the face that says, I know you didn't read the chapter, so don't try to lie to me. Mr. Wade, Tessa began, the camera whirring in the corner, state your name for the record. Caleb James Wade. Mr. Wade, did you or did you not allow Elena Barrett to pay for a wedding totaling $23,000 while knowing you were sterile? Objection, Harrison grunted. Relevance. It goes to the count of fraudulent inducement, Tessa shot back. Answer the question. Caleb cleared his throat. He looked at me. He tried to give me that sad puppy dog look, the toxic benevolent stare. I didn't allow her, he said softly. She insisted. She wanted the perfect day. I just wanted to make her happy. I was going to tell her about the medical stuff later. I didn't want to ruin her dream. You didn't want to ruin her dream, Tessa repeated, deadpan. So, when you let her book a honeymoon to Greece on her credit card, were you protecting her dream then? I intended to pay her back. With what money, Mr. Wade? Your bank records show you had $12 in your checking account on that day, and yet you upgraded the seats to first class. Who pays for an upgrade with $12? Caleb shifted in his seat. I was expecting a bonus. A bonus, Tessa said. She pulled out a document. We subpoenaed your employer. There was no scheduled bonus. In fact, you were on a performance improvement plan. Is that correct? Caleb went red. I don't recall. Let's move on, Tessa said, flipping a page. Let's talk about Julianne Hart. When did your relationship with Ms. Hart begin? We're just friends, Caleb said quickly. Too quickly. Friends, Tessa said. Do you often take friends to the Austin Fertility Center to discuss IVF options? The room stopped. Caleb froze. Harrison looked at his client with genuine shock. Excuse me? Harrison said. We have the sign-in logs, Tessa said, sliding a paper across the table. February 12th. Caleb Wade and Julianne Hart. Consultation for donor sperm IVF. You were planning a baby with your friend while your fiancé was addressing wedding invitations. Caleb put his head in his hands. He didn't answer. He couldn't. The math was irrefutable. I watched him crumble. I felt a profound sense of emptiness. He wasn't a master villain. He was just a pathetic, greedy little man who wanted everything and refused to pay for any of it. Julianne was next. She walked in wearing a white power suit, looking like she was ready for a TED Talk on resilience. She had clearly been coached to play the victim. She sat down, flipped her blonde hair over her shoulder, and glared at me. Ms. Hart, Tessa said, did you know Caleb Wade was engaged to Elena Barrett? I knew he was in a relationship, Julianne said, her voice icy, but he told me it was over. He said they were just living together for financial reasons until the lease was up. He said she was emotionally unstable and threatened self-harm if he left. Emotionally unstable. The classic liar's defense. I wrote a note on my legal pad. Ask about the registry. Tessa saw my note. She nodded. If you thought the relationship was over, Tessa said, why did you like and comment on his Facebook post about the wedding registry on June 4th? Julianne blinked. I was being supportive. As a friend. Supportive, Tessa said. And when you went to the fertility clinic with him in February, was that also supportive friendship? We were exploring options, Julianne said, her voice wavering. He told me he wanted a family with me. He said Elena couldn't have kids. I almost laughed out loud. He told her I was the sterile one. It was brilliant in its perversity. Ms. Hart, Tessa said, leaning in, did you know that Caleb Wade used Elena's credit card to pay for the dinner you two had at Justine's Brasserie on July 10th? Julianne's eyes widened. What? The $120 bottle of wine? Elena paid for it. The chocolate mousse? Elena paid for it. You were eating Elena's money. Julianne looked sick. The power suit suddenly looked like a costume. I didn't know, she whispered. He told me he got a raise. He lied to you too, Ms. Hart, Tessa said, her voice surprisingly gentle. You're not a co-conspirator. You're just the next victim in line. But unfortunately, ignorance isn't a defense for civil theft when you knowingly participated in the deception. Julianne started to cry. Real tears. Mascara-ruining tears. He told me he loved me, she sobbed. He told me she was crazy. We know, I said from across the table. It was the first time I had spoken. He says that about everyone he owes money to. 3 weeks later, Harrison called Tessa. They wanted to settle. They didn't want to go to trial. They didn't want the text messages read into the public record. They didn't want Julianne's career destroyed or Caleb's reputation nuked any further than it already was. The offer is $20,000, Tessa told me over the phone. No, I said, $47,863, plus legal fees, plus a public apology. They don't have that kind of money, Elena. Then they can set up a payment plan, I said. I want a lien on his condo. I want his wages garnished. I don't care if it takes him 10 years. He pays every cent. Tessa laughed. You're brutal. I love it. I'll call Harrison back. They settled for $40,000 and a confidentiality agreement regarding the specific medical details, which was fine, since I had already announced them to the entire church. The condo lien was filed. Caleb was officially working for me now. I signed the settlement papers in my kitchen. I used a glitter pen. It felt appropriate. September, the first day of school. I stood in front of my AP biology class. 25 teenagers stared back at me, smelling of body spray and desperation. Welcome to AP Bio, I said. I'm Ms. Barrett. I picked up a marker. I drew a Punnett square on the whiteboard. This year, we're going to talk about genetics. We're going to talk about inheritance. We're going to talk about how traits are passed down. I paused. I looked at the fresh faces. And, I added, we're going to talk about the importance of evidence. Because in science and in life, people lie. But DNA doesn't. A hand went up in the back, a girl with pink hair. Is it true? She asked. The story about your wedding. My mom heard it from her hairdresser. The class went silent. They all knew. In a town like Austin, a cathedral explosion is news for years. I smiled. It was a real smile this time. Not the manic smile of the wedding day, but the calm smile of a survivor. We'll get to that in the unit on reproductive ethics, I said. But yes, it's true. And the lesson is, always check the receipts. Now, open your textbooks to page 10. I turned back to the board. I was broke. I was single. I was living in a smaller apartment. But I was free. And for the first time in 2 years, the equation of my life was balanced. It has been 90 days since the settlement check cleared. I used the first chunk to pay off the credit card debt Caleb saddled me with. The rest went into a high-yield savings account that I named the Freedom Fund. Caleb lost his job at the marketing firm. Apparently, having your fraud exposed in a deposition doesn't play well with corporate HR. I heard from a mutual friend that he's working in sales for a solar panel company in San Antonio, calling strangers during dinner. I assume my garnishment checks are coming from his commissions. Julianne transferred to the Dallas office. She blocked me on everything, but Tessa tells me she broke up with Caleb the day after the deposition. Smart girl. Late to the party, but she got there eventually. Arthur and Meredith are complicated. They had the baby, a boy. They named him Chance, which feels like a cruel joke. My mother is trying to play happy grandmother, but the family dinners are excruciating. I don't go. I send a card. I love my nephew, but I can't look at my brother without seeing a motel receipt. Some stains don't wash out. As for me, I'm dating again. His name is David. He's an actuary. On our first date, I asked him for his credit score and a 5-year plan. He didn't run. He laughed and pulled up his Experian app right there at the table. 750. We're taking it slow. No rushing. No miracles. Just math, logic, and the beautiful, boring truth. And I kept the ring. I pawned it last week. I bought a telescope. Because if I'm going to look for signs of intelligent life, I'm certainly not going to find it in my ex-fiancé. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.